Excuse me. All right, there we go. All right, go ahead and turn to Psalm 55. Psalm 55. We're going to read the first 8 verses. And the title of our lesson this morning is Having Done All to Stand. I want you to notice in verse 1, it says, Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not thyself of my supplication. Attend unto me and hear and hear me. I pray I mourn in my complaint and make a noise because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. My eye is sore pained within me, and the terrors of death are fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. And I said, Oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest. Lo, then would I wander far off and remain in the wilderness, Selah. I would hasten my escape from the windy storms and tempests. Dr. B.R. Lakin used to say that two of the most important things in life that we need are direction and diversion. There is sometimes when we know that we are following the Lord's will, we're doing what He wants, we're being directed by Him, and then in the heat of the battle, it is good just to have a little diversion. He went on to say, he says, a lot of preachers would never resign their churches in the heat of the battle if they would just stop and begin to think about something that was pleasant. A lot of missionaries would never have left their field of labor for the Lord had they taken some time to think about something pleasant. A lot of people would not leave their jobs, thank you, if they would learn to go home and not take their jobs home with them. So many of us, God's people, we are surrounded by bad things. Sometimes the only good that can come is when we just stop and we just use our imagination and think about some things that are pleasant. And that's what King David was doing here in this passage. In David's case, I want you to notice what he said in verse 6. And I want us to think about this, because we can apply it even into our own situations. He makes this statement, oh, that I had wings like a dove. To him, it seemed like, hey, if I just had wings like a dove, that would bring me relief. That would bring refreshing. The very thing that he felt that he needed at the time. The psalmist obviously was not the first. He's definitely not the last person who ever wished that he had wings like a dove, that he could just fly away. Many times we feel like this. We just feel like the psalmist, oh, that I had wings like a dove, that I would fly away and be at rest. People, of course, we don't have wings. We can't just fly away. But I will tell you this, we are fleeing. We flee. In the midst of the battles, in the heat of the battle, many times we just flee. I want to show you what I mean is, first of all, I want to ask this. What would we be fleeing from? Yeah, there are many people, they're fleeing from disagreeable people. People will flee from disagreeable people. Sometimes we have disagreements with someone, and at times we would rather be around anybody else. We would rather be anywhere else than around that individual. You know what I'm talking about. Some people have moved out of neighborhoods because they wanted to get away from people that annoyed them. People will transfer from one college to another college to get away from somebody who just irritated them. People have quit their jobs and just to get away from someone that they disliked or they disagreed with. You know, we know that feeling of just being so irritated by somebody that you see them coming down the road and they're on the same side of the sidewalk that you're on, and what do? Oh, I got to go over here. We don't want to meet them. We don't want to see them. We don't want to talk to them. We don't even want to be in the same vicinity as them. We just don't want to be near them. And many of us know what the psalmist was saying when it comes to disagreeable people, when he said, "Oh, that I would have wings like a dove, then I would fly away and be at rest." Many in our society, they are fleeing from people that they consider to be unreasonable, disagreeable people. So some people are fleeing disgusting jobs. They get tired of hey, many of you know that there was a time that somebody would get a job and they would stay at that job and they would be there all their lives. And then when they get older and they're ready to retire, they would be given a gold watch for their many years of service. And that tradition is almost unheard of in our society because people flee from job to job. We live in a world today where people, by the time they're 30, they've had more jobs than they have fingers on one hand, and by the time they're 40, they have more jobs than you use your hands and your feet for, and so it's a lot of times the reason is because they come against disagreeable people that they don't want to be around. Or something is done in management that they don't agree with. There was a time when if there was disagreement, you work things out. Now, many times people just move, they flee instead of working through their problems. And today when they get disgusted with something at work, what do? They just walk off. They flee to another job. And many of us know what it means when it comes to our work, that I would have wings like a dove, that I would be able to fly away and have rest. So some people are trying to flee from even disturbing neighborhoods. There was a time when people would grow up in a house in a neighborhood, and even during adult time they would stay in their neighborhood. Many people lived in the same home all their lives. Many even lived in the same house until they died. That's not real common today. Today, in many neighborhoods, it's just like a rotating door. It's like, okay, well, I have neighbors today. I wonder who my neighbors are going to be tomorrow. They'll come in, and people don't even know their neighbors because they've only been there for a few weeks, and they really don't want to get to know them because probably in the next year or two they're going to be gone too. And many people, they have a difficult time trying to find a neighborhood that's worthy of their presence. At least that's the way they feel. Some people try to flee from discouraging spouses. Divorces are common across the country. Most of the divorces are a result of people fleeing from their mates because they're convinced that their mates are making their lives miserable. There are some people. There are people who would say, you know what? Oh, if I just had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away. These are some of the things that people flee from. But I also want to look at is how they're fleeing. How are people fleeing these days? Well, some people will feel that alcohol and drugs are the answer. I have some disturbing statistics here. Over 60% of the world's illegal drugs are consumed right here in the United States. 60% of the world's illegal drugs here in the United States. They said that there are over 5,000 new cocaine users every single day in the United States. There are some 3.3 million American teenage alcoholics today. That's disturbing. There's an estimated 10 to 23% of workers that use drugs on the job. I don't know about you, but I don't want my physician, before he's ready to do surgery, being high on some drug. They're disturbing numbers. Why is it? It's because people are trying to flee. Things around them they don't like, they don't want to be around, and so they're trying to flee, they're trying to escape. Federal agencies estimate that substance abuse costs nearly $100 billion in lost productivity each year. I don't know if you remember this. Remember Nancy Reagan? Nancy Reagan said this about those people. She says, a chemical high becomes their salvation. For those people, it's the drugs, the alcohol. It takes the place of faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Some people feel that their answer to their problems is, oh, if I could just fly away. If I could just be on the wings of, have the wings of the dove. And what are they looking for? They want to be on the wings of drugs and alcohol. Why? Because they're trying to fly away. They're trying to flee. Some people feel that divorce is the answer. And yet many of those people, they will marry again. But listen to the study. A study of divorced couples with preschool children shows that after a year of being divorced, 60% of men and 73% of women feel that they made a mistake and should have tried harder to make the marriage work. People have no idea the anguish and the stress that's caused by divorce. There was a judge. He was a judge of the Court of Common Pleas in Toledo, Ohio. Listen to what he said. To call me a judge is something of a misnomer. I am really short of a public mortician. In the past 11 years, I have presided over the death of 22,000 marriages. See, people are trying to fly away on the wings of drugs, of alcohol, divorce, whatever. They just want to escape. So why are we fleeing? Why are we trying to flee? What is it that causes us to want it? And I'll tell you, it's the same reason that we find here in Psalm 55. It's the same reason that David wanted to flee. Why did David want to flee? First, he was outnumbered by his enemies. David was outnumbered by his enemies. He wanted God to deliver him. Look what he says go back to Psalm chapter 17. Psalm chapter 17. Right in the middle of verse 8, he says, hide me under the shadow of thy wings from the wicked that oppress me, from the deadly enemies who compass about me, who surround me. You can almost picture David, if you like the old Western movies, and you can almost picture that David here is one of the cowboys who lived in that era when there was the war with the Indians, and you know the scene where the wagon trains, they'd be coming around, and David would have found himself in the same dilemma that these cowboys found themselves in. They're in the covered wagons, they're all alone, and the Indians would ride up around them, and they would surround them, and they would attack them. And you know what? David felt that way. David felt, my enemies are all around me. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything because everywhere I turn, there's an enemy. And can I tell you, often we feel like that too. Often we feel like, I'm standing alone. There's nobody else around, and I'm encompassed around by my enemies. And I can just see David. He says, I don't know what to do. Oh, my enemies are all around me. Oh, if I just had wings like a dove, then I would fly away, and then I'd be at rest. As far as I know, this is a true account. A pastor called up his pastor friend from another town and told him, he says, I'm going to resign from my church. The pastor who made the call had been used of God very mightily for the work of the Lord in his town. And God had used him he built a church that covered really acres of land. Their Christian school ran approximately 600 students. Nevertheless, Satan had been fighting him all along the way. Over the years, some of the folks had become his enemies. The pastor had called, and made him a promise that he would not resign until they had a chance to talk the next week. And so the discouraged pastor agreed to hold off one more week. The next week, the pastor friend went to see this discouraged pastor, and they decided that they would go downtown to eat while they discussed his problems. The pastor had come to help, said, have you changed your mind about resigning? The discouraged pastor says no. He says, I'm convinced that my work on this in this town is finished. As they were sitting at a light, he looked over, and there was in a nearby car was a man. He says, you see that man? He was once a drunk. His wife was about ready to lead him, and I had led him to the Lord and saved their marriage. He began coming to church, and within a year, he had forgotten all that I had done for him, and he began telling lies about me, trying to destroy me as a pastor. They drove down a little ways, and they came down to the street, and he said, that man over there talking with that other man, he says, the preacher acknowledged him, and he said, that man is talented. He can sing better than any man in this town. He came to our church, and in a short while, he began having an affair with one of the women in the church. Everyone in the church knew about him, and I went to him, and I told him that he could not sing in our church until he publicly confessed his sins and asked God and the people to forgive him. The preacher said, he said, well, what did he do? He began to spread the lie that I was involved with a woman. As they rode down, the discouraged pastor pointed out person after person that had tried to destroy him or was currently trying to destroy him. Later on, they rode back to the church, and this pastor says, no, I'm going to resign. I have too many enemies in this town to overcome. He says, it's time to move on. In a few short years, that wonderful church had dwindled down to a handful of people. Today, the church doors are closed. The school is closed because he wanted to flee. You see, the answer is not to flee when we're surrounded by our enemies. The answer is to stand. And it's hard. It is hard to stand when you look around and you see people that you had helped. It's hard to stand and say, hey, these are the people I poured my life into. These are the people that in their darkest time, I was there for them and I helped them. And many times when they turn and they become your enemies, you say, how can I go on? The answer is not to flee, it's to stand. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13 says, wherefore take ye unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. We've got to do everything we can to stand. We can't flee in those difficult times. The second reason that David wanted to flee was because he had been betrayed by his best friend. His best friend and advisor, Ahithophel, as you know, some people who can bless our hearts, nobody can bless our hearts like friends can. But also no one can hurt us the way that a friend can hurt us. And the devil knows it. David's good friend, Ahithophel, had stabbed him in the back. He had broken David's heart. The one man that David felt that he could count on turned on him. Well, you say, well, some of you might be saying, who's Ahithophel? Ahithophel was originally the counselor of King David, and later on just betrayed David. It's really interesting when you look at who Ahithophel is. We don't have time to do this, but I encourage you, go look at who Ahithophel is, and look at why he betrayed David. It's a very interesting study. But anyways, Ahithophel was David's counselor, and David had a number of counselors, and if he went there and he was talking about the problems in kingdom, or maybe some decisions that needed to be made, he talked to his advisors, and this one was saying do this, this one was saying do this, and maybe there's some agreement there, and Ahithophel would say, hey, no, here's what I would advise. David would take Ahithophel's advice. He so trusted him, he so trusted his wisdom, and yet Ahithophel betrayed David, even to the point of aiding Absalom in his rebellion to overthrow King David. Every word that Ahithophel spoke seemed as wise as though it had come directly from the mouth of God. 2 Samuel chapter 16. For every word Ahithophel spoke seemed as wise as though it had come directly from the mouth of God. That is how much David trusted in him. Ahithophel had a gift of wisdom, and he turned on him. Think of who your best friend is. What if tomorrow all of a sudden they're spreading rumors about you, false rumors? How do you react? And you would say, as David said, "Oh, that I had wings as a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest." The third reason that David wanted to flee was because his son Absalom sought to be the ruler of his father's kingdom. He didn't care even if his father was killed. He just wanted the kingdom. And David cried out in verse 6 here. He says, "Oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest." But even though David knew his enemies were many, he knew that his friend had stabbed him in the back. He knew that his own son was trying to undermine him. God taught him something. Don't flee. You need to stand. I want to show you three things in the few minutes that we have remaining. I want to show you three things from this passage. Number one, I want us to see what David felt. David felt neglected by God. You say, what do you mean? Well, look what verse 5 says, or verse 1 in chapter 55. It says, "Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not thyself from my supplication. Attend unto me and hear me. I mourn in my complaint and make a noise." It was almost as David was saying, "God, you give your ear to everyone else. Now would you please give an ear to my prayer?" Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like, you know what, hey, I'm praying and God's not hearing my prayer? But I come to church and I hear about somebody saying, hey, I was praying for this and God answered it. God heard my prayer, and he so graciously answered it. And we can get into this feeling that David said, Lord, you're giving your ear to everyone else, but what about me? David wasn't claiming to be perfect. David had sinned. He knew it. He says, would you just hear my prayer? Does it seem that God seems to be helping everyone except you? He felt neglected by God. He also felt abused by people. Notice what he goes on to continue to say in verse 3. Because of the voice of the enemy, because of my oppression of the wicked, for they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. Notice that word cast. He says they cast iniquity upon him. It's the only time that they said that they would say anything about him was always in the negative sense. They would never say anything good about him. He says, if my name comes up with these people, it's always negative. They have nothing good to say about me. See, they were more happy to say bad things about him, but they would never say anything nice. Why not? I want you to look at the phrase in verse 3. He says, in wrath they hated me. In wrath they hated me. They were so angry with him. They hated him. They wanted to see him dead. That's his enemies. David felt neglected by God. David was abused by ungodly men. This is what he felt, but look at what he feared. I want you to notice what he feared. And in verses 4 and 5, look at these two verses. And when you read verses 4 and 5, what you're going to find a man who is in a very pitiful condition. Notice, he says, my heart is sore pained within me. The terrors of death are fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. You know, when a man comes to the point where he can say these things about himself, this man is in bad shape. No wonder that he gets to verse 6, and he says, oh, that I had wings as a dove, that I would fly away and be at rest. Number 3, I want you to see what he fancied. In verses 6 through 8, and I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest. Lo, then would I wander far off and remain in the wilderness. Selah. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. What is he saying? David had a fantasy. What is his fantasy? Bless you. His fantasy was that, oh, if he could just become like a dove that had wings, he would fly away. But where would he fly to? You know, he says, I have all these things happening in my life. My enemies are around me. People are hating me. They want to see me dead. And he begins to fantasize. He says, oh, if I just had wings, I would fly away. But the question is, where would David flee to? And this is one of the things I like about the Psalms. Because like David, we can not remain in an imaginary world, at least not for a long time. We have to deal with reality. And he does. You see, we are not to flee. We understand that from what we just have gone over. God wants us to stand. And how do we do this? If we find ourselves in the situation that David found himself in, and we just want to escape, we just want to flee, would you go down just a little bit farther in Psalm 55? Go to verse number 16. Because notice what he says. He says, as for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. He says, I don't have wings. I can't flee like a dove. So where am I going to flee to? I'm going to flee to the Lord. He says, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Here's what he was saying. He said, look, God delivers those who put their trust in him. David says, as for me. As for me. You know what, as I was looking at that phrase, I realized, and I realized something David realized. David recognized, and he realized, I don't have control over anyone else. I don't have control over my enemies. I don't have control over those that hate me. But when he comes to verse 16, he realizes, I do have control over me. I have control over myself. As for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. You know, when you find yourselves in the situation where it seems like everyone's against you, when you find yourself in the situation where people seem like they hate you, they just want you to be done, you can't do anything about that. I know we'd like to, but we can't. We need to flee to the Lord and say, you know what, as for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Maybe you're like me, probably are. Because I wish that I could make decisions for other people. I know I could make decisions that would change their lives for the better. But I can't. But as for me, I can make the decisions that will affect me. I can stand. And as David said here in verse 16, is exactly what you and I need to do. When everything seems to be going wrong, when everything seems to be going against us, as for me, I will call upon God. Listen, When you call upon God, you're not wasting your time. When you call upon God, you're not saying, well, I just need to fill a few minutes of my day. No, no, you're not. David says, and the Lord shall save me. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful to know that when we call upon the Lord, that He hears us? Here's the statement I want to close with. It's verse 17. Notice, look at verse 17. Because he says, well, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Notice what he says. He says, evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and He shall hear my voice. Doesn't matter the time of the day. It does not matter what's going on. We can call upon the Lord. Morning, noon, or night. And He will hear your voice. Precious Heavenly Father, we thank You so much. Lord, You have called us to stand. You did not say it was going to be easy to stand. There are times where it may seem like everyone is against us, and You've called us to stand. I know many times we'll say, well, just stand alone. But I'm so thankful we don't have to stand alone, that You are with us. You hear us. And Lord, I pray this morning that we will, having done all, that we will stand. Help us this week. Help us to realize that we can stand in the power of Your might. Lord, I pray that You'd be with our morning service. I pray that You would just speak to hearts, Lord, whoever may be here. If there is one that would come here this morning that does not know You as their Savior, Lord, my prayer is that they would see their need today and they would get it settled. And we'll thank You for it in Jesus'